Hey, I want to join a country club. I want to buy a second home. I want to have a boat. Eventually, you run out of money, right? You don't have enough money to fill all those buckets, all those goals. So you end up not thinking about what are the things that I have control over in the plan, right? How can I get dollars in my plan to work more effectively, more efficiently? Each financial decision is not in a silo by itself. It has to be looked at how it relates to something else in your plan. And most people are not looking at the big picture. This is John Smallwood, and I am back on Money Isn't podcast, and I am very excited about my topic of today. It is something that I actually can't believe how good this was, dating back to 1995, 1994, somewhere in that realm. My father and I, who were business partners, did what's called an audio business card, as you can see on the screen. If you can't see it, you can see it on the YouTube channel. The audio business card the box looks like a cassette tape. And the theory behind this from a marketing perspective was it's lumpy. If you give it to somebody, they're not going to throw it away. It's going to sit around on a shelf for a long time, right? It's going to have some shelf life. And the idea was breakthrough thinking for the catalyst for financial freedom was the topic of the conversation. As you can see, it is one of these old school things called a cassette tape, which not sure some people watching this would actually realize that we had technology like this. This was something that people would actually say to us, and this is really funny. People would say, "Oh, I got your video and I watched it because it looked like a VHS tape box back in the day." And we're like, "Okay, that's great." But it was an audio tape. But we would never say that because who cares, right? What's interesting is it was an interview with my father and I. It was scripted around what we did back in that time frame. And this morning, when I went for my 1.5-mile dog walk, I queued it up and I listened to it. And I cringed because my voice, I figured it out. It made a reference to our area code of our phone number that was 908, which didn't get changed to 1997 to 732, the same exact phone number. Okay. So I was like, oh my God, how old am I in this video? Now, on the front cover, John P Smallwood, my father, is an accredited investment management consultant at that time. I don't have any designations after my name. I got my certified financial planning degree in either 95 or 94. I can't remember at this moment, but I should have looked that up, right? Oh, no, I do have the certified financial planner. So it's post 1995. Okay. So it's around 1996 that we recorded this because it's prior to me having any children. On the back of this, my wife and I live in Long Branch at this time. Okay. So I think what's interesting is when you listen to what the content of this 20-minute audio tape is, the information that we're talking about, which is what our intent was when we recorded it, was not to be topical in the moment, but to be one of those, as people would call in marketing, an evergreen tool, okay? Meaning it's going to be good for a very, very long time. It's not something that has to be rethought, revised, redone. And there's so many elements in this that I want you to listen to it. And then I'm going to come back at the end of this podcast and I'm going to make a lot of comments around the content because what you're going to hear is more true today than it was when we actually recorded this content. The content itself applies to business owners. It applies to corporate executive. It applies to people that are middle level, people that are factory level, people that are floor level, people that are trying to create wealth. But ultimately, it really appeals to people that want to create more wealth than they currently have. Okay. They want to get on a better trajectory. These concepts are going to help you get there. I think what's interesting, when you listen to yourself, you can find, all the things that you might have said, would have done differently, would have expanded a little bit more here and there. And I think that's one of the feedbacks that I have for it. But I'm really interested, as you get to the end of this and you listen to it, what are your comments? What are your feedback? What do you think about this? How do you think this document or this presentation is one of those eternal presentations? Okay, let's roll it. Here we go.
You are about to share in an experience that has benefited many individuals, business owners, and professionals. You're going to hear an interview with two of the outstanding financial planners in the industry today, John P. Smallwood, accredited investment management consultant, and John L. Smallwood, certified financial planner. You'll hear exactly what they do and why they do it. This interview will be most informative and insightful, and will let you hear for yourself why many individuals and corporations have already chosen to let the Smallwoods handle their financial planning decisions. But before we go on with the interview, let me tell you a little about them. John P. Smallwood and John L. Smallwood have more than 27 years' experience in the financial planning industry. As a team, the Smallwoods' objective is to inspire, educate, and empower their clients to reach their full financial potential. Combining their backgrounds in economics and finance with postgraduate study, they have produced expertise in a variety of subjects related to wealth creation. Their expertise in investments, taxation, life insurance, executive compensation, estate, and charitable planning have led them to the belief that financial success does not rest solely on the selection of quality investments. More importantly, financial success requires avoiding many possible causes of failures. Winning financial strategies must integrate financial resources into solutions that are designed to maximize one's wealth while eliminating the forces that can take wealth away. Traditional accumulation methods lack this power to both create and preserve wealth. For this reason, they have created Smallwood Associates as a registered investment advisor to better serve their clientele. And now, let's listen to the interview. I noticed the title of your cover, Breakthrough Thinking, the Catalyst for Financial Freedom. John Sr., tell me the significance behind it.
Well, there's a revolution in thinking, and we see its results happening in industry, in health, and in personal achievement. Quite frankly, we do not see this revolution happening in the area of personal finance. Breakthrough thinking is a unique form of problem solving, which involves making a situation better by first raising your expectations much higher than anyone believes is possible, and then looking for ways to make it happen. The key is that if people continue to act in the same old way, they may accomplish only a 5 to 10% greater result by working harder. To get improvements of 2 to 10 times, the outcome or target must be high enough to force people to realize that they can never reach the new goals by using the old system or the old model. They will have to approach the problem in an entirely different way. By changing the strategy and approach, you can produce far greater results by using the same resources, the same manpower, and the same efforts. These results have taught us that the answer is not working harder with more money and more people. Success is reevaluating and redirecting our resources. In industry, we see the same parallels with individuals. Industry is being confronted with the same forces of change as individuals are being confronted with. Some corporations survive, others perish, as evidenced by the Fortune 500. In 1969, 11 Fortune 500 companies reported a loss. In 1985, 70 did so. And in 1992, the number reached 149. 70% of the largest industrial firms in the U.S. and Europe in 1955 no longer exist. 40% of the 1980 Fortune 500 have disappeared. The companies that survive and thrive have a common denominator, and it's a tool called breakthrough thinking.
That sounds exciting, John Sr. Can you give me some specific examples of businesses that have used breakthrough thinking?
For example, Levi Strauss, in an industry that, on average, takes 66 weeks to get a product from fiber to shelf. Levi does it in just 6 days. They do this with the same resources as everyone else. The key is the new model they have developed is so efficient. In fact, they have just introduced custom fitting jeans in 10 days. Most manufacturers couldn't even fathom the idea of custom jeans, let alone in 10 days. Another example we're all familiar with is Domino's Pizza. They took an old idea, one that existed long before, and they created a billion-dollar company. Domino's has the same dough, the same cheese, and the same sauce, but they rethought the whole business and created a new model, a new way and more effective way to do business. Same old resources, new expectations, better results.
Now, John Jr., how does this technology, breakthrough thinking, relate to personal finance?
The financial environment is complex and ever-changing. People often feel overwhelmed by a sense of disarray and anxiety. They are beginning to learn that piecemeal solutions for accomplishing major financial objectives do not work. There must be a fresh framework that helps people move from confusion to clarity and from half measures to integrated solutions. Most people have a financial potential that is never unlocked, even if they are phenomenally successful in business. The majority of people never accumulate the kind of money they are capable of creating. Much of this is due to the demands that are placed on them by their businesses and their personal lives. These demands keep many from focusing their attention on money decisions and wealth-building strategies. In our practice, we have found that there are consistent problems in financial planning and the wealth-building strategies promoted by the financial institutions. When I say financial institutions, I'm referring to the banks, the federal government, insurance companies, mutual fund companies, brokerage houses, and other related financial institutions. In personal finance, we see the same old models governing our actions. We see people doing the same as everyone else and hoping for a better outcome. It simply cannot happen. The old models that are given to us by the financial institutions limit our success. They reduce our expectations of what our full financial potential is. These models are taught to us by the financial institutions, who are the same institutions that sell us the products we must use to create a financial plan. These models rely heavily on linear thinking. Using these models, people are not creating the wealth they should be. These old models are not factoring in the possible variables that could happen during our lives. They ignore changes in tax laws, fluctuations in markets, lawsuits, disabilities, plus unforeseen factors and variables that should be accounted for. These models have trained the public to search for easy, single-factored explanations for success. But for most important things, success requires avoiding many possible causes of failure.
So what you're saying, John Jr., is by not having all of the facts and variables, we are unable to get a true gauge of our financial success. How does the new model overcome these simplistic solutions?
There's an illusion of accumulating wealth today. Generally, more money is transferred to the financial institutions than is retained by investors. The tools we use in the planning process will make it clear where this money is being eroded. The new models rely on nonlinear equations. These equations are used to describe the behavior of things with unpredictable outcomes, such as our finances. These equations allow you to visualize how things work in the real world, how tax laws and rates affect your bottom line, how changes could impact them, how fluctuations in markets, lawsuits, inflation, disability, death, and all possible factors that could affect the true value of your plan in the real world. In reality, everything in the world is non-linear. Even baking a cake, turning up the oven's temperature twice as high won't bake a cake twice as fast.
John Sr., can you elaborate on this further?
We are finding that people are confused by the multitude of products and services being offered by financial institutions. In 1969, there were only 290 mutual funds. Today, there are over 6,000 different funds to choose from. You can purchase mutual funds that invest in other mutual funds. Over the last 10 years, there have been over 9,000 tax law changes, affecting virtually all aspects of investing. These changes happen usually just when you seem to understand the law. There's an information explosion happening. and we need a filter or a new model to get through the misinformation that the media is constantly bombarding the public with. A recent article in Wealth magazine stated that professional advice has been wrong over 75% of the time. With information booming and people's lack of time to research all aspects of their financial plan, they're finding that these piecemeal solutions, which are so highly touted, are not working. This constant change and barrage of information leaves people vulnerable to losing most of their wealth. In fact, studies reveal that the average person will lose $1 to $7 million during their lifetimes and not even know that they've lost it. Further studies reveal that less than 1% of the population accumulates enough wealth to maintain their standard of living through retirement. We see the same old solutions being forced to solve complex and ever-changing problems. These forced solutions only create new problems. These forced solutions do not have uncertainty factored in. They do not give you the ability to change direction at any moment. If you find a new goal or the tax law changes direction, that's not what's happening here. We feel that all financial decisions must be evaluated with full disclosure before they are implemented. The client must understand the pros and the cons of each financial decision and their long-term ramification. This process teaches our client to think strategically about their finances. Once it is understood where capital is being eroded, your full financial potential becomes evident.
The new model sounds very exciting, but how are these principles applied to the wealth creation process?
The importance of nonlinear tools is it allows the industry to get a real-world look at their resources or asset value and the impact of different combinations of these resources on various potential outputs. It is surprising, but we do not see this breakthrough thinking and its analytical tools being used in the personal financial planning area. The industry continues to promote the old models and old linear thinking. Using the new concepts and tools in our practice, we utilize a financial model that will allow you to visualize all of your financial decisions at one time. You will see how your protection decisions, your savings decisions, and your growth decisions coordinate. This tool will reveal the strategies that are eroding wealth from you. The model will eliminate hearsay, opinion, bias, sales, and media hype from the planning process, allowing you to make integrated financial decisions based upon fact and nothing else. These integrated solutions that we utilize are designed for each individual client to help them avoid the wealth eroding strategies. The process will clarify the client's financial potential and, most important, how to get there. These integrated solutions encompass not only maximizing wealth, but also maximum protection against the eroding forces. The multiple strategies promoted by the financial institutions as wealth creating strategies become questionable when analyzed under the new model. Working with a new model will allow you to design a plan that is geared towards creating as much money as optimally possible, reducing or avoiding income taxes, earning higher overall rates of return while learning to manage investment risks and developing methods to recover costs to the plan. Most important, working with the new model does not require any new money. It focuses its attention on fixing the leaks and uncovering potential problems that are not currently showing. Once this is accomplished, your financial plan will grow much faster. You will see the dynamics of your resources change, your expectations elevated. Your current resources will have greater outputs than was thought to be possible.
How would you differentiate the old model planning versus the planning with the new model?
The major goal of the new model is to achieve maximum wealth and maximum protection, where the old model limits people to a preconceived need or goal with minimal protection. What we are talking about is accumulating the maximum amount of money. Another word for money is currency, which reflects the flowing nature of energy. The word currency comes from the Latin word curre, which means to run or to flow. Traditional financial planning models restrict the flow of money. They promote money to sit still. If we stop the circulation of money, we will stop the circulation back into our lives. In order to keep money coming to us, we must keep the money in motion. Like a river, money must be kept flowing. Otherwise, it begins to stagnate, to clog, to suffocate, and strangle its very own life force. Circulation keeps it alive and vital. The new model is effective in applying this concept of keeping money in motion. The old model ignores cost recovery. The new model is concerned with recovering cost, as we call it, financial recycling. The old model relinquishes control of your money to the institutions. The new model maintains control over money at all times. The old model says postpone taxes by deferral. The new model strives to avoid or minimize taxes to the full extent. The old model has minimum protection against risks. The new model stresses maximum protection against every risk. The old model strives for conservation of the estate. The new model not only conserves the estate, but more importantly maximizes its growth. The old model has minimum flexibility. The new model has maximum flexibility to react quickly to changing environment and opportunities. The old model always assumes no change. The new model assumes worst-case defense. The old model verifies each component on a microeconomic basis. The new model uses macroeconomics to verify.
Working with both of you, what can I expect?
The process is extremely hands-on. While we use computer models to demonstrate specific points and concepts, we do not give our clients large, confusing proposals which they do not have time to read. Instead, we become your partner in the planning process and evaluate each financial decision that you have made, providing you with full disclosure for each decision. This process allows our clients to understand what is truly happening in their finances. As you are probably aware of from our conversation, that the financial institutions do not provide the public with both sides of the equation. We feel that for anybody to have a successful financial plan, they must have full disclosure so they can truly make informed decisions. Once this is established, we then together with our clients can easily create a financial plan that eliminates the eroding strategies, creating the maximum amount of wealth possible while protecting it against variables that can destroy it. There are no miracle products. Simply buying a product and hoping that it does it again is clearly not the way to financial success. But to focus on the coordination of your investment decisions is where success is truly created. One financial product alone cannot make you successful, but using a number of products in an integrated, coordinated way will. It's sort of like golf. Owning the best clubs does not make you a great golfer, but spending time coordinating your swing so that each club in your bag is an effective tool for each leg of the course makes the game consistent and the results consistent, no matter what the terrain is like. Once it is clear how you should coordinate your financial products and use them in the most productive way, selection becomes simple. This process will result in having more money to educate your children, to purchase second homes, for business opportunities, more money to retire, and any other thing that you could possibly imagine. Our commitment to you and the process is unlike anything you have experienced before. We will carefully analyze all components of your plan, and you will gradually see your full financial potential being revealed as we work together toward the goal of financial freedom.
Thank you, gentlemen. This concludes the presentation. Naturally, the benefit you derive from this tape depends entirely upon you. What you've just heard is an introduction to the type of service that sets the Smallwoods apart from others in the industry. Your next step should be to contact the Smallwoods to schedule your first meeting to begin the process. They are located in Shrewsbury, New Jersey, and can be reached at area code 908-542-1565. And thanks for listening.
I'm kind of blown away by this presentation. As I sat and I listened to it, actually I walked and listened to it walking my dogs, the opening line where we're talking about like success is not about the goals. And what we're talking about is that most people limit their thinking to a preconceived notion. They have embedded ideas that if I just get to $1 million at retirement, everything's going to be fine. Okay. But they're capable of getting to 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 million. They just don't see it in their plan. And what was really interesting is my father pointed out that you have to set larger goals to change the way you're thinking. If you have small goals, it requires no change in thinking. You'll simply slowly grow and move in a forward direction, but you'll go slowly. If you set a goal, it's going to cause friction, and that friction is going to cause something that says, I need to do something differently to get to the higher level, okay? So I was really incredibly grateful to hear this thinking at the time, which is how we have driven the business. Like, what's really interesting is we were 2 guys operating in Shrewsbury, New Jersey, sharing space at the time that we recorded this. You know, he has since moved on in life, and I now have 3rd generation, his grandchildren. 3 of my 4 children are in this business, Jack, Jared, and Christopher. Not in order of entry, okay? But in birth order, that conversation is, okay? But what's interesting is that the same core principles of this business have been expanding, and we've gone from the 2 of us to now well over 17 people on staff with multiple advisors. But fundamentally, we're doing the same thing. Better technology, better tools, better visuals, better podcasts, better audio recordings. It sounds like when you listen to the audio recording, it might be one of those things that you find on YouTube that's like Earl Nightingale and it's like 50 years old. It kind of sounds like that, right? It kind of sounds like that. But I'm happy to be part of that group, okay? I'm happy to be here, and I'm incredibly grateful. What I want to talk about is we referenced something in this document about, at the time of the recording, there had been, over a specific period, which I forget the exact period in the document, but it was over like a 15 or 20 year time frame, there were over 9,000 tax law changes to the tax codes, which affected every single person who earns income. All right. You think back at the time of the recording, if it's 1995, it is in President Clinton's first term. He had taken the top tax bracket from, I believe, 28% to 39.6%. And they had imposed excise taxes on specific assets that were in what are going to be called qualified retirement plans, IRAs, as we know them, right? And one of the tax laws at that time, which is subsequently gone, all right, so this tax law is no longer relevant, but in the time of the recording, there was an excise tax on IRA balances. It worked in 2 formats. If you took out more than $160,000 out of an IRA, you paid your ordinary income tax plus a 15% excise tax. If you died with more than $750,000 in the qualified plan, the amount over the $750,000, your beneficiaries would still pay the ordinary income tax because that's all deferred. The tax has never been paid. The tax has to be paid plus a 15% excise tax. And you couldn't roll IRAs into deceased IRAs at that time. So you think about, we now have Secure Act 2.0. We have all these different impact laws that have changed just qualified plans. So the focus of breakthrough thinking was, when I make financial decisions and I narrow these financial decisions into one financial product of the time, one flavor of the time, one thought of the time, I subject myself to future tax laws when I go to take things out. I'm pushing money in a deferral. I'm just using deferral as an example because there's a whole bunch of other things that have impacted. You've had depreciation changes. You've had, deductibility changes. You've had, like myriad of tax law changes, okay? And the purpose of this is not to dive into the tax law changes because they're going to change, right? But the purpose of the breakthrough thinking is traditional financial planning says create an envelope, create an account, right? Create something that is earmarked for a specific goal and ignore all other factors that are going on in your life. Ignore taxes, ignore transaction fees, ignore inflation, ignore, hey, I got 17% credit card debt over here, but I'm going towards this goal and I'm putting money at 3%, but meanwhile I'm paying out 17, right? This is, the idea was breakthrough thinking says, let's look at the macro. Let's look at the amount of money that's being transferred out of your financial strategy. If you're making $100,000 a year, just use that as an example, you might be making 10 million, okay? You might be making 50,000. Just multiply the 100 or divide, okay? The amount of money that gets saved off the top of the income might be 10%, might be 15%, might be -5, depends on the person, okay? And when we're assume a 15% tax rate. So we're saving $15,000. And that's great. We're putting it into the retirement plan and we're deferring to an unknown point. Great. But we're focused on the rate of return and that product and leaving it in a product for a very, very long time frame, which the 5 rules of the financial institutions, they're winning because they get to keep our money. They're compounding that money. They're compounding the fees, and we're also compounding the taxes. Even if I'm in deferral, let's say I put $10,000 in my retirement plan. $10,000, and I'm in a 30% tax bracket. Let's make the math super easy for 1 second, okay? So I put $10,000 in, which means that I'm gonna now make a return on the full $10,000. Technically on a balance sheet, $7,000 of that is mine, and $3,000 is the IRS, right? So if it compounds at 8% for the next 30 years, that $10,000, the $3,000 tax money compounded at the 8%, which is the IRS money, and the $7,000 compounded at 8%, which is the IRS money. If I do the math, the only way I win on deferral is to take money from a high tax bracket, and if I take it out at 20% versus 30, I win. If I take it out of the same tax bracket, you technically do not gain any more money, even though you're compounding on the $3,000. And this is where I want tremendous comments and feedback. This is where I want everybody that hates us and loves us, do the math and come back, okay? But the idea is, meanwhile, here we are focused on this $15,000 or $10,000 worth of savings, and out of the other, $85,000 of earnings that I have, I've got leaks going everywhere. I'm not paying attention to the fact that I'm paying my car insurance on a monthly basis as opposed to annually. And they're charging me 10% interest on that, or my life insurance, or my errors and omissions coverage, or a whole myriad of leaking financial strategies. I've got 52 different streaming services, which, by the way, we didn't have any streaming services. We had, HBO, okay? Now, we had just got a cell phone at this point in time. And I remember in 92, we got this amazing fax machine, it was breakthrough, okay? But the idea is, if we focused on the leaks going out, let's say that in that $85,000 of other money, we could reduce income taxes a little bit. We could reduce the leakage of, bad ways of paying for stuff, get rid of the redundancies, get rid of the things that we don't need in our financial plan. Let's say we recaptured, $1,000 in leaks. That's money. That's a fabulous return. If I'm saving $10,000, it's a 10% return. It's about a 6 to 7% additional money that you've recaptured. And the idea is that what we talk about in this strategy is that the average person, this is what we said, will transfer somewhere between $1 and $7 million away from themselves in unknowing financial leaks. We like to call it, it's the narrow focus planning trap distracts us from what's really happening. Okay. This was something that those principles today, that theory is actually accelerated. People are transferring more money than they were then. People are making more money. So the lost opportunity cost on the amount of money being transferred is further. The life expectancies of the average person are up. So over your lifetime, it's a significant amount of money. So as we talk about the model, right? We talk about this breakthrough thinking, and the idea is not to take the narrow focus planning trap, not to look at, I've got a retirement goal, so I got to put money aside for the retirement goal. I got an education goal for my kids, so I got to put money aside for that. I've got, hey, I want to join a country club. I want to buy a second home. I want to have a boat. You get the idea. Eventually, you run out of money, right? You don't have enough money to fill all those buckets, all those goals. So you end up not thinking about, well, what are the things that I have control over in the plan, right? How can I get dollars in my plan to work more effectively, more efficiently? How can I get $1 to work like $3, $4, $5 as opposed to $1 going to one goal? Okay. So this structure in this breakthrough thinking, we're talking about everybody that's listening to this right now has a unique set of circumstances. The dynamics of your plan, the elements, the components, the way you pay taxes, the way you save your money, the way you allocate your funds is completely different and unique to you. It is not like your brother, not like your sister. It's not like anybody else, okay? It is you. And your financial strategy needs to be coordinated with what your goals and dreams are. And as a financial advisor, your financial advisory team needs to kick you in the direction that is, hey, like, we see this compelling future. What if I, instead of accumulating $1 million at retirement, I can literally go find all these financial leaks and recapture a couple $1,000s more a year that I was actually doing now without changing my lifestyle? That might get me to $1.5 million, $1.6 million. You got to do the math. But like, how much better would that be to have 50 to 60% more money or twice the amount of money? Because when you get to retirement and your earnings stop, you don't get a second chance. And now you're retired. You might be retired at 65, 67, 55. You now got 30, 40, 50 years that this money has to last. And I think people give about 30 minutes in their retirement planning consciousness to say, I'm ready to retire. And they retire because their perception is they have a lot of money. But the reality is, where I have the money and how I have it allocated produce the income that I want, not need, want to live off of? And do I have inflation protections? And do I have tax strategies that, hey, what if, going back to the earlier conversation about when this was recorded, what if it's 1940s, 1950s, and I'm deferring money in a deferral plan, which did not exist at that time, okay? And I'm in a 30% bracket, and the bracket goes to 90%. Do you think it makes sense to take any money out of any qualified plan at that point in time? But what if I'm forced to through a required or minimum distribution? Yes, I did. In the podcast, in the old videos, you will see a history of the U.S. marginal tax brackets. And there's a period of 21 years where the top marginal bracket, the top bracket, was over 90%, 21 years. If you look at Golf Digest 1994, they are interviewing Jack Nicklaus. And they're saying to Jack, how do you think Clintonomics is going to impact your plan? And he said, I don't know, it can't be that bad because my first year on the tour, which I believe was 1964, I made $100,000 and I paid $90K in taxes. So how bad is 39.6 was his comment, right? And I was like, what? He paid 90%? Then Ronald Reagan, in his book, I think it was 1954, he made $1 million and he paid $900,000 in taxes. He had no tax planning. He got a really good accountant. That's why they had the studio parties that lasted for days and days and days and days, because it was all write-offs back in that time, right? But that's why, he had taken the at the time when he became president, the top marginal bracket was 50%. He lowered it to 28, but they also took away a tremendous amount of deductions. So more money was exposed to the tax. So it wasn't a 50% reduction in the tax rate, really. It was probably like a 30 or 40. You'd have to do the exact math. This is not the purpose and the place to actually do the exact math, okay? So now, once the whole purpose of this thing was to get a macro view, which now we do this concept called the wealth curve blueprint, which everything we were doing in 1995 when we were recording this, we have evolved and continued the same conversation with the same principles and the same theory. We talk about before you make a financial decision, you need to know the pros and cons of what you own. When you're reviewing and updating your financial strategy, before you make any financial decisions to move something or change something, you really need to understand what it is that you own. Most people do not do that. They're like, oh, this is better and here's why, and move it. And they're back in the same rate of return Olympics, chasing financial returns, okay? So what's interesting is you start with a macro plan, you understand your defense, you understand your income, you understand where your taxes are, you understand what your lifestyle is, you understand how your current assets are allocated, what your current debt structure is, what your future goals and dreams and obligations are. Like, hey, I got 4 kids and I got 4 kids that I'm going to put through college. Well, that's a pretty big obligation that I put out there, right? So the idea is now you have this blueprint, you have a snapshot of where you are, and you look at this plan and say, if you change nothing, where do you end up? Are you happy with where you end up? Most people are not happy. And then you start to apply some modifications to the variables, because every financial plan, and this is what we're talking about in this breakthrough thinking, is every financial plan is subject to variables and assumptions. And what we're saying is that the assumptions are flawed because everything is going to change. The interest rates, the tax rates, the debt structures, your job, your lifestyle, your everything, you change one variable and the entire plan changes. You change 2 or 3 or 4 variables, it's not even the same plan. And that's what you have to understand is what is the financial pressure? What is eroding your capital? What could erode your capital? And do you have readiness in your plan for that? Now, once you understand where you are, you now need to implement that wealth plan with financial products. And in this thing, we mentioned at the time, there are over 5,000 different mutual funds to choose from in 1995 range, okay? Today, there's over 7,500 mutual funds. And there's a new thing called an exchange traded fund, which is sort of like a mutual fund, but a little bit more efficient. There's over 3,500 of those now. So now you have more choices, more data, more information, bigger opinions and bigger biases moving your thoughts. So now you got to make a decision. What am I going to implement with? How do I selectively choose from that, 10,000 choices that I have? It's a difficult process. Then you apply, there's car insurance, there's homeowners insurance, there's life insurance, there's disability insurance, there's a corporate benefits, there's different tax structures that I can be investing in, from a college planning perspective, from IRA, from deferred comps to taxable to Roth. And it's like, how do I organize this set of products into a way that reduces risk, reduces fees, reduces taxes, helps me increase my savings, increases the protection around that wealth, allows me to have more retirement income, and to pass more to my family or my favorite charity or the loved ones that I have, right? And what we're saying in 1995 is most people are doing the exact opposite. What we're saying in 2025 is most people do the exact opposite. They pay more taxes, they pay more fees than they should. They have more risk than they are aware of. They have less savings. They have less protection. They have less retirement income. And often corporations, financial institutions, other people take your wealth before you're gone and your family ends up with less. So what makes me really happy is that the information hasn't really changed. Our thinking has evolved and become better and cleaner and more, with better clarity. But what we were doing here around 1995, we're still doing. And we're still doing it thinking the same way. We haven't abandoned something. That is now 3 generations of wealth planning with an unbelievable team that we've assembled around this team to do one thing. And that one thing is to help you become the best possible financial version of yourself. And the key is, can we do this? The key to our planning is, can we help you understand where you are, understand where you're going, understand where all the financial leaks are in your plan, and constantly update it and review it and tweak it so that over the next 30, 40 years, you achieve what you want to achieve. And I say 30, 40 years because you might be 5 years to retirement. You might be 5 years into retirement. You might be 20 years to retirement. But your financial plan doesn't stop when you get to retirement. Retirement's not the top of the mountain. The top of the mountain is a spot, it's a destination. And then, what happens when people climb large mountains? Where do most deaths occur? On the ascent or the descent? And I think if you do some research, you'll find that most people die on the way down, not on the way up. Okay. And it's like, is my financial plan going to get me to the bottom of the mountain, or am I going to die somewhere in between? And when I do, what's the impact and the ripple effect throughout my entire plan? You got to know that. I hope we make it to the bottom, but you can't predict the outcome. This has been a fabulous conversation. I urge you to subscribe, to share, to like, to comment, to provide us with as much feedback as you possibly can, because this show is only successful with people like you that like to listen to it, to like to share it, like to comment on it. And it's without you, we can't do this. Without our clients, we can't do the great work that we do. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Thank you.